today we're going to be talking about, or learning to round decimals to the nearest whole number. Okay, so we've been talking a lot about decimals, we've been talking a lot about place value. So if we look at our place value chart, we'd have tens, units, tenths, and hundredths, and then our decimal point. And just as a reminder, which I know you don't need because we've been doing this so much and you're all experts at it, but on the left side of the decimal we have whole numbers, and on the right side of the decimal we have fractions. Okay, so we're going to start with some numbers here. We've got 2.4, 2.5, 2.2, 2.9, and 2.1. So all of these have units and tenths. Okay, I've not put any tens in, I've not put any hundredths in, so they all have units and tens. And what we're going to be trying to do today is say we have 2.4. What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to find the nearest whole number. Okay, so the nearest unit is what I'm looking at today. What is the closest unit I can get to? So first what we'll do is we'll plot all of our numbers on our number line. So we've got 2.4, so 2.1, 2.2, 2.3, 2.4 will go here. 2.5 will go next to it. 2.2 will go back here. 2.9 is here, and 2.1 is here. All right? So if we remember when we're rounding, what we need to be able to find is we need to be able to find halfway. Okay? So we're looking at the nearest whole number. So we're either going back the way towards 2 or we're going up the way towards 3. And that is essentially what we're up to today. So halfway between any two whole numbers would be 0.5, right? So this is our middle point, the 0.5, okay? And we know that when we're rounding, that anything halfway or higher, we would round up to the nearest whole unit, and anything lower than the halfway mark, which in this case is 0.5, we would go back the way. Okay, so if we're looking at, where did my rubber go? If we're looking at our number line here, we can see that 2.5, okay, and 2.9, we would both round to the nearest whole number, which would be 3. All right, so I'm just going to get rid of this here. We'll put a marker here. We've got 2.4, 2.5, 2.2, 2.9, and 2.1. Okay, so we know that 2.5, that's halfway or higher, so it would go up to 3. We could put 0.0 if you want, but it's not necessary because there are no fractions here, it's a whole number, and 2.9 would also go to 3, okay? And if we look at our number line here, 2.4, 2.2, and 2.1 are actually, in fact, closer to 2 than they are to 3. They are less than halfway. So all of these three, we're gonna just say, do you know what? Their closest whole number is 2. So what we do is what we call round down to 2. So 2.4 would become 2, 2.2 would become 2, 2.1 would become 2. Okay? Okay. Okay, that last part was for rounding to the nearest whole number, which is fine. Sometimes we do want to round to the nearest whole number, but sometimes we also might round to the nearest tenth. So our next lot of numbers, they all have units, they all have tenths, but they also all have hundredths. Okay, so in this case, if we plot in our first one, which is 3.41, okay, what we're trying to do is we're trying to figure out, we're going to be looking at our hundredths now, and we're trying to figure out what's the nearest tenth to it. So our two options in this case are either going to be 3.4, all right, which would be the lower end of the spectrum, and the higher end of the spectrum is going to be 3.5. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to plot them on a line. So put 3.4 here and 3.5. It's like we're zooming in between the two to find 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So we find our hundredths between 2 tenths. So 3.41, it's just going to go plop it right here. 3.43 is here. 3.48. 3.4, oh, I labeled that one wrong, sorry. 3.45, and pop this one up at the top because I'm running out of room. 3.46. Okay, again, the same rules apply. We have to find halfway. So halfway between 3.4 and 3.5 is going to be 3.45. So this is my halfway point. And I know that anything that lies halfway or higher, I'm going to round up. And anything that lies lower than halfway, I'm going to round down. So 3.45 is halfway. I'm going to round it up to 3.5. 3.46 is higher than halfway. I'm going to round it up to 3.5. 3.48 is also higher than halfway. I'm going to round it to 3.5. Whereas the other ones, 3.43 is not quite at halfway. I'm going to round it down. And 3.41 is actually really quite close to 3.4, so I'm going to round that down as well. All right, so if I was writing it out, 3.41, I would round to 3.4, or, oh yeah, we'll talk about that in a minute, 3.43, I would round to 3.4, 3.45, I would round up to 3.5, and then etc., etc. Okay? We could also take a number and we could round it to both a tenth and a whole number. So if I was talking about, let's say, 3.41, okay, and I wanted to round it to the nearest tenth, okay? Now if I was talking about the nearest tenth, we just did that. We said that in fact 3.41 is closer to 3.4 than it is to 3.5. So my nearest tenth would be 3.4. Okay, but I could also round it to the nearest whole number. So I'd be thinking about my number line again. So my nearest whole number is either going to be 3 on the lower end or 4. Okay, now if I'm thinking about 3.4 and 3.5, they would be sitting 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, so 3.5 would be here and 3.4 is here. So my number, 3.41, would be sitting somewhere about here. And if we're talking about halfway, we've said that 3.5 is halfway. So 3.41 is lower than halfway, which means I'm going to round it down to 3.3, sorry. So my nearest whole number is going to be 3. Okay, so we can take the same number and we can round it to the nearest tenth or to the nearest whole number. Okay, let's do that with a different example, one that we haven't tried yet. Let's just rub these all out. Okay, let's talk about, so let's say 8.79. Okay, if I'm going to plot that to find the nearest tenth, I'd have 8.7 and 8.8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, so halfway would be 8.5, or 8.75. 7.1, 7.2, 7.3, 7.4, 7.5. So this is halfway. Remember, anything above here is going this way. And 8.79 would actually fall right here. So if I'm talking about 8.79, my nearest tenth is actually 8.8. All right, and if we're talking about the nearest whole number, I'm either going to have 8, which would be on this end, or 9, which would be on this end. And I've got 8.1, 0.2, 0.3, 0.4, 0.5, 0.6, 0.7, 0.8, 0.9. So I'd have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 8.5 in the middle here. My number is between 8.7 and 8.8. So this is 8.7, this is 8.8, and my number, 8.79, is right here. Okay, so in fact, it's over halfway to 9, so my nearest whole number, by rounding it up, would be 9. Okay? Okay.